How are we doing, ladies and gentlemen? I hope you're all enjoying your summer so far. Not a ton of Bulls news and updates recently, given it's that time of year where it's in between free agency and before training camp begins. But since it's Wednesday, and since I haven't done one of these for a few weeks now, I thought what better time than to check out some of your Bulls hot takes and react to them. So in today's video, we're going to be going through some of these hot takes, and if you're new to the channel, feel free to leave your takes in the comments below to be included in a future video, and also subscribe if you enjoy the content. But with that said, let's get into some of these, shall we? So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Our first take comes to us from Kyle Prather. We should go after Draymond. I knew we were going to have some hot takes regarding Draymond Green after we saw DeMar make a guest appearance on Draymond's podcast, in which they talked about the historic nature of the Chicago Bulls as a franchise and what Michael Jordan has built. And obviously, you learned in the podcast that Draymond and DeMar are actually very close friends who are in communication often. So naturally, it leads one to believe, well, they're good friends. At some point, you would think they would want to team up. And now that we recently learned that evidently the Warriors are unwilling to offer Draymond Green a max extension, and he could be looking at exploring other options to get the deal that he wants if the Warriors balk on working out a contract extension with him. But all of that being said, I don't see the Bulls going after Draymond once he becomes a free agent, because the Bulls won't have the requisite cap space to actually get him unless they want to facilitate a sign and trade. And I think at the end of the day, he's going to remain a Warrior. The Warriors aren't going to want to give up the heart and soul of their team. And not only that, I just don't know that it would make sense for the Bulls to even pursue Draymond, given he's likely going to require a lot of money for a player who's going to be 34 by the time he's actually in fact a free agent, because people forget he actually has a player option after this upcoming season. So while yes, he could become a free agent after next season, I would be shocked if he turned down his player option of $27 million when he's 33 years old. But either way, you're talking about a player in their mid-30s who, yes, would fit exactly what the Bulls need in a strong defensive playmaking forward, but at the same time is going to be an older player that you're going to have to shell out a lot of money for. And I think by next season, we'll realize the Bulls will have better options when looking for front court players. And again, you also have to assume Patrick Williams is going to take a leap to help out your front court, where a player like Draymond won't be as greatly needed, at least an older Draymond Green anyway. I do agree we could absolutely use a player like him for his energy, hustle, and veteran leadership, but not at a max contract, not for his age anyway. Next, we've got Benedict, Rookie of the Year. This may be Billy's last season as the Bulls head coach. Normally, I would tend to agree, but here's the thing. When AK hired Billy Donovan, he really fought hard to get him. I've said this before, but Donovan was not rumored to be considered as the Bulls head coach as far as all the options were back in the day when they fired Jim Boylan. You mainly heard names like Kenny Atkinson, Ime Udoka was one, that's the guy I actually really wanted, Darvin Ham, Jamal Mosley, all coaches who have now secured head coaching jobs. And then the Bulls jumped all over Billy Donovan once he became available after him and the Oklahoma City Thunder parted ways. Not saying it was a bad hire, but AK really wanted Billy Donovan because of his head coaching experience, the fact that he's coached all-star level veteran players, but also coaching at the collegiate level, which shows his ability to develop younger players. The point being, even after the somewhat disappointing first season when the Bulls failed to make the play-in, and obviously the big drop-off last season at the end of the year and the quick early first-round exit, the fact still remains that even when there have been questions and speculation around Billy Donovan and whether he's the right coach for this team to be able to contend, the front office has always continued to double down and maintain that Billy is their guy, and they're not going to deviate from that. I actually asked Casey Johnson this, the Bulls beat writer for NBC Sports Chicago, when I had him on the channel a few weeks back, and he added, yeah, there is no way they're letting Billy go. He is their guy. Of course, this is barring any unforeseen circumstances, like if the Bulls end up being fully healthy and they're still barely making the playoffs as a play-in team, or even worse, missing the playoffs entirely, yeah, that would likely be Billy's last season with the Bulls. Like, you can't miss the playoffs with the level of talent you have. Again, assuming the guys are healthy, there would be no excuses for that, and you would have to fire Billy as a result. Next, we've got Drift for Drifters. In 2025, Pat's value will be much higher than LaMelo's. That's a pretty bold statement, considering LaMelo, who is also the same age as Patrick Williams, has already made an all-star selection, albeit selected as an alternate due to injury. He was the Rookie of the Year and appears to be the Hornets franchise player in the making, while Patrick, although injured for a good portion of last year, hasn't shown that he's even come close to being an all-star, not yet anyway. That being said, I do think that LaMelo's game is slightly overrated. I say slightly because at least right now, and of course his playstyle could shift over time, but despite the great numbers that he puts up, 20 points per game, near 7 rebounds and 7 assists, his on-court, off-court numbers aren't actually as great as you would think someone who's talked about as being a potential superstar in the making is. And his game also doesn't really translate to winning all that much. Now, of course, some of that is a product of the team for which he plays for, not having the requisite talent to actually be a winning team. But it's not like this is a trash roster either. But anyway, all of that is to say there are aspects about LaMelo's game that I don't think people talk about enough that actually hinder his value more than people probably think. But his value is obviously much higher than Patrick Williams at this current time. 3 years from now in 2025, I mean, it's really dependent on how much you think Patrick is going to progress, because while yes, I think he will progress, so will LaMelo Ball, and it's hard to see Patrick actually passing LaMelo in terms of being a better all-around player to where he would have more value than him in just 3 years' time. But I wouldn't say it's out of the question. A lot of things can happen in that amount of time, especially as it pertains to injuries or players suddenly dropping off. Next, we've got Johnny C137. Bulls should give anything and everything to get Donovan Mitchell as our starting point guard, even Lavine. What? First of all, Donovan Mitchell isn't a point guard. Second, the Bulls have too many guards already. And no, Mitchell is not the type of player that you give everything for. Donovan Mitchell is a fine player. It's part of the reason the Jazz have risen to prominence in recent years is partly due to him, at least in the regular season anyway. He's an incredible offensive player, but he's not a once-in-a-lifetime generational talent type player that you do whatever you can to get. I wouldn't even say that Donovan Mitchell is better than Zach Lavine. Like, I know a lot of people talk about both of them as similar type players with their athleticism and scoring prowess and not really being the best defenders, but I personally would rather have Lavine because he's a more efficient player on offense. Mitchell is a little younger, but not by much. Just No, the Bulls should not be doing anything and everything to get Donovan Mitchell. They are set with their backcourt. We can let Mitchell go to another team. Next, we've got Clutch Buckets. P-Dub is an all-star next year. Can't see it happening, my man. Not saying that Patrick can eventually become an all-star at some point in his career, but he's not going to go from what we've seen so far in his short career in his third year to all of a sudden having an insane breakout to becoming an all-star. And a lot of that is also just because he's not going to get as many touches as he would normally need to be in order to actually get an all-star selection when you have the likes of DeMar, Zach, and Vucevic taking up the bulk of scoring, and also assuming Lonzo is healthy, he's going to get a lot of looks as well. I just don't see it happening for Patrick this upcoming season. I do think he'll make a jump, but certainly not an all-star type level. Next, we've got Rogelio Garcia, Coby White, and a second-round pick in exchange for PJ Washington or Harrison Barnes. I actually like the idea of trading for someone like Harrison Barnes, a good veteran player who can give you some scoring and defense off the bench. It would give the Bulls more depth. PJ Washington, also a nice player as well. Either of these guys would be decent fits on the roster. Problem is, I don't see Coby in a second being anywhere close to what either of these teams would want for these players. PJ Washington, you could potentially get it done, but he's still young, so I'm not sure if the Hornets would want to make a switch for Coby White. Harrison Barnes doesn't really fit on the Kings with what they're trying to do given his age. I'm actually surprised he hasn't been traded already. I really expected him to be moved at the last deadline, especially after the Kings added Domantas Sabonis. But even though the Kings might be looking to move on from Barnes, I don't think Coby White and a second round pick is going to be enough value in return for him. You would likely have to make it that first round pick from Portland to make it attractive of enough for the Kings. The other thing is salaries wouldn't work since Barnes is going to be making $18 million next season. You would have to add some additional pieces to match salaries, which the Bulls don't really have unless you want to give up valuable pieces like Alex Caruso, which would be a non-starter at that point, in my opinion anyway. Next, we've got Trayton Collins. Mo Bamba will have a better PER than Vooch this season. I mean, PER isn't always the best measurement of accuracy, especially when minutes played aren't factored into it. Even that aside, I don't think Bamba would have a more efficient season than Vucevic. To be honest, I don't know how much playing time Bamba is going to get on the Magic, given how center heavy they are. I was actually surprised they re-signed him as a restricted free agent. You guys already know I actually really wanted the Bulls to sign Bamba for the mid-level exception as a backup behind Vucevic because he already fills a lot of needs for the Bulls with strong rim protection as well as outside shooting. But no, I mean, Bamba last season had a PER of 16.5 while Vucevic was at an 18.2, which was on the lower side for him as he had a PER of near 23 the season prior. And I actually think Vucevic is going to have a stronger season than most people think. So I guess in short, no, I can't see Mo Bamba having a higher PER than Vucevic. Next, we've got Australians are free. Simonovic will be the backup 5 behind Vucevic and in front of Andre Drummond. Yeah, no chance. I mean, despite Simonovic having a decent summer league, he had 2 really good games and was pretty underwhelming for the rest. I still just don't see him being NBA ready for a guy who didn't get any meaningful minutes and play most of his season in the G League last year. Nah, he's not going to crack the rotation over Drummond. Drummond was signed specifically to back up Vucevic. I don't see Simonovic getting rotational minutes when you have such a strong rebounder and experienced NBA veteran in Andre Drummond. Simonovic might get some non-garbage time minutes this season, but he's not going to be the backup 5 behind Vucevic. It's just not happening. Anyway, guys, I'm going to end it there for this week for your Bulls hot takes. Keep the takes coming for future videos. I may not do these every week like I did during the season, but I'll try my best to get them out when I can. Until then, guys, as always, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.